meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable and lovely in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. After the storm, the impetus is to say, thank God we are safe, if we are. To look downriver and say, dear Lord, help those in the floodwaters. That is, if we're on dry land. To look to the sky and wonder at the moon. To post pictures that say, yes, we are alive, even on the edge of the verge of catastrophe. It is okay. It is good to celebrate life. It is so good, in fact, that we might dance in the streets with Thanksgiving when the power comes back. Not naming names. But when you did. But if we are honest, there's a part of our souls that might still be hoarding water and food and power. That takes each bowl of soup with gratitude after losing weeks worth of food to spoilage. Part of us might still be exhausted at that encounter with the edge of the swirling chaos, that might wonder that we did not drown, and still aware of those swirling waters just miles away choked with sewage. Some of us have storms that are bigger than this hurricane in our lives. We are conscious of the privilege that we carry and how precarious it really is. There really is no us and them, after all, is there? This can be uncomfortable to think about. But I felt this urgency when I was a chaplain in homelessness ministries in Honolulu, preaching in the great city cathedrals, to remind folks that there is no us and them. It's only our access to resources, and literally access to the higher ground, that buys us comfort in hard times. Which is why many of us feel a need to help, to give of that bounty that we have. And I pray you do choose to find a way, whether it's contributing a small share, or volunteering somewhere, or making one of these buckets up. You know, I had to convince many of my clients at the shelter to not give of their limited resources to their brothers and sisters on the streets until they were more secure in themselves. But I marvel at how easy it is to give when the specters of death and scarcity are an everyday appearance in your lives. When I realized this week, or last week, that in some ways I know better how to be a minister, a chaplain really, in times of chaos and crisis, than I do to be in this calm and peaceful place of Pinehurst, where the coffee and scones place across the street is an oasis in the midst of the storm. That Sunday morning it was packed. Packed. But I am learning. I am learning how wonderful a life in a community that these peaceful and beautiful things are accessible. It just means that we have more to give, does it not? But what of the storm itself? That whirling vortex, that slow-moving, low-pressure, voluminous cloud of wet pouring itself over our lands, bearing down slowly in intermittent howls of wind and rain. What came to you in the dark, or in the shut tight? Those 20-some odd of us that gathered in the sanctuary last week to have a worship of a kind and shared lessons of the storm, acknowledged helplessness, loneliness, and thanksgiving for those who came to aid. And the storm brought up memories of storms past. Chris and Catherine remembered a harrowing rescue at sea. I had gone racing down to Charleston with the specter of Hurricane Hugo on my mind, a similarly dangerous storm at Florence's outset that took a last-minute turn and left us for 2 weeks without potable water or power. And when I say us, I mean the relatively privileged upper middle class and upper class. There were areas that didn't have power or water for 2 or 3 months after Hugo. The same will be true here. We react differently based upon our experiences. I asked the kids what their experience was of the hurricane, because during Hugo, I remember huddling in a hallway with wind that sounded like a freight train, in the words of my mother. Or to me, remembering a screeching, screaming that came in gusts as if the walls were porous, turning the sliding glass doors to a semi-liquid state, men madly nailing 2x4s in the pelting rain to secure the undulations to the sound of urgent directions over a ham radio that was owned by the people we evacuated to. Never knew what a ham radio was before. Never so thankful for one either. And in the closet behind me, my sister slept through it. No surprise then that my reaction to this storm was to race down to Charleston to secure her safety. Meanwhile, she was like, storm, poo-pooing its strength until the last minute, when it turned out she was right, mostly by chance, that the storm had already weakened, having dumped so much of its moisture on us up here. But that's the danger with each storm that we put at arm's length, not addressing, pretending like it doesn't exist until the real one comes. Isn't it? Or is it? Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. We are meant to take refuge in the holy, no matter the storm outside or within, the storms of life or the storms of climate change. Or Jesus being able to sleep, being able to tell the wind and the rain, peace, be still. And then telling those who tried to follow, why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? I smile and think of this. I slept better in this howling storm than I have in months. Think of my sister asleep on a pile of coats in that closet in that Category 4 storm. Was she not more Christ-like than those of us who huddled in fear like the disciples? Who can sleep through a storm except for those who trust in God, who trust in those who care for them, that they will be borne to safety? I worried. I was more like a disciple. I drove. And then I prayed like crazy about this place, this community, and found that if I searched my soul, if I listened to God, I found that my place was indeed here with you, where I am called to serve. I made a decision to come back and weather the storm with you that at that point looked like I was leaving safety and driving back into the heart of the storm. But how could I not when y'all weren't leaving? What was I doing outside of the storm away from you? If my sister even had the peace to sleep through the storm that she thought was coming. So I came back, I made sure that those of you who needed the care had it to be well. And then I made sure that you knew that there would be a service of some kind. And I really thought it was just going to be me in a dark church. So I can't believe y'all actually came. Crazy Jesus worshipers. And it was beautiful. But in that waiting between announcing the service and having it, what could I do but hunker down and pray? I watched the wind and rain. Best I could do was pray and sleep and hope you were doing the same, enjoying the reprieve that the cancellation of the installation allowed. It's coming. It's moving. As I slept between waves of rain, I prayed. There was almost never any cell service, and the internet was mostly out. I couldn't contact you but by phone or occasionally get on Facebook or email to see that people were okay. And the air grew more thick and dense inside the house. Outside was refreshingly green and pouring, the air bending the trees up high. I was reminded of my days in Hawaii in single-wall houses, the jalousie window slats almost always open to the wind and light rain. But even when closed, allow the wind, small entry to make the curtains move. The houses breathe, and you along with them. The wind and breath of life that will not leave you be, nor do you want it to. These days we live so much more cut off from God, which Wendell Berry remembers in his poem, How to Be a Poet, and puts in parentheses, to remind myself. Breathe with unconditional breath the unconditioned air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a three-dimensioned life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. The beauty of a hurricane is not in its suffering and devastation. I refuse to teach that God intends suffering and punishment. I believe in a God, rather, who accompanies us through the storm. Nor is there beauty in the resultingly, increasingly erratic storms because of climate change and what we're doing to creation. No, the beauty comes in the experience of the raw power of creation, and that same force that can create can also destroy. That storm humbles us and reminds us who is God. The real beauty is after the storm. It unfolds in the ways we quit our tents and help one another, remembering that what matters so much isn't what the politics of our neighbor are, but how they are. After Hugo, everyone's freezers were thawing out. It's Charleston, so that meant there was marlin and mahi steaks and venison to be used up. The families up and down the street that didn't have trees through their roofs took turns hosting parties, cooking up the food on camp stoves and with propane grills. After we finished cleaning our yards, we went down and helped those who were still working. I was kind of bummed. I thought once we were done with our yard, I could play. Nope. Go clean up down the street. Chainsaws became a part of the collective ownership between neighbors. The smell of pine sawdust permeated the air. I learned to wash clothes in buckets, my mother taking secret pleasure that her kids would not be as helpless as she thought they were. She, who had grown up with an outhouse and lived on a subsistence farm, her knowledge was all of a sudden valuable, and she had a chance to pass it on. It took a long time for the water to stop tasting of pine pitch. We used to joke that we never ate so well as after the hurricane. It was a sheltered life. And so these were my lessons. This is how we help. We pitch in when and how we can. But I heard a woman interviewed on NPR the other day whose home wasn't recovered yet from Matthew when Florence came in hurtling. They lost everything to Hurricane Matthew's flooding and were still rebuilding. And they just lost everything again. She said that her 13-year-old daughter starts shaking and hides when it rains. They've been there down the road in North Carolina for generations, but she said it's time to leave. They can't do this anymore. We have had climate refugees for years from small island nations like Tuvalu. Now we have them just down the road. These families will remember the storm very differently because, again, there is no us and them. It's about access to social capital that determines when the power trucks come or how we can rebuild. But we have to remember that power is not just the electricity that runs through our walls, but what we have to help change systematic injustice that would perpetuate the plight of the marginalized. Whether we're cooking meals or seeking better lives for our children, we are always better together. We can be reminded that we do, indeed, people have. So how do we live in that place between the God who sleeps through the storm, who calls us to stillness and out of our screen-filled lives, and the God who is present through our suffering, and the God who calls us to justice? We do so by recognizing all of these facets of the face of God and find our place in the mix. God is our refuge. God is our shelter from the stormy blast. In the psalm and the gospel readings today, we are told, be still. I invite you to stillness. I invite you to rest and relax into God's arms. to find a faith that allows you to sleep through storms so that you are ready to act when God calls you to action, or to be still when God calls you to stillness. I invite you to listen in the breath of the wind, for the way God is calling you to walk when you get to the other side in that boat. May you be born safely, whatever storms you are facing, and may you truly know the peace of God that passes all understanding.